it was giving me a appropriation is hereby called to order. The Village Secretary of the Appropriation is there. I would also like to welcome the board members, Eric, and the rest of the Brooklyn Bridge Park staff.
Release man.
My understanding is that currently there are no members of the public here, but if there are, we will hear any comments from them at the conclusion of our regular agenda. Now get started with the voting items for today's meeting. The first agenda item is adoption of the minutes of the March 12th, 2025 Board of Directors meeting, which is bookmarked in your board book in item 1. A draft of the proposed minutes was circulated to the directors prior to today's meeting, along with the materials for all items to be considered today. Do any directors have questions, changes, or corrections? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve? I'm on it now.
Sorry.
Right. All in favor? Aye. Motion is approved. The second agenda item consists of the president's report, a non-voting item, and the approval of the fiscal year 2026 operating budget and the PAAA budget report as a voting item.
Thank you. Also just want to remind everybody that I believe we are expecting Peter to join us via Zoom, and therefore, as part of our meeting policy with that, we are live streaming this meeting as well. So while there may not be any members of the public currently in the room, it is possible that someone is watching. That's all I can do is sing the 80s songs I'm watching, but that's okay. Joel.
Yes. All right. How to get to the presentation view?
That is toward the end of the deck. Thank you. Wonderful. In anticipation of our first agenda item, our second agenda item, excuse me, the upcoming fiscal year 26 budget, I always think it's good to kind of walk through what we've done this year, kind of broad strokes, what's happening for the coming year, and then kind of generally what we think about is like what's long term on the horizon, which also generally impacts how we think about budgeting. So next. Obviously, this year was the second year of ice skating underneath the Brooklyn Bridge and the Emily Warren Roebling Plaza. However, this year was the first year that we ran it, not as a concession, but as an operation. And while there are some things that we can and are improving on, certainly as it relates to the pricing structure and the finances, from an operational and user experience perspective, I think we right-sized it this year. I think the rink was well maintained, well run. I think the associated building was much more in line with the size of the space and the bridge. And so I think this was a huge positive, and we are looking forward to opening the Roebling rink for its second year, with us running it as a park operation come this winter. Public art is always a significant thing for us, as you all know. We had another amazing public art fund installation throughout this entire year on the Pier 3 Blade Lawn. Next. The Pier 5 tot lot underwent an incredible makeover, and I want to congratulate Shira and John and Rob and Lindsay and the entire capital team for spearheading this project. It's all new play equipment, as well as a brand new shade structure that is up over both areas of the brand new playground. That's a beautiful day after the meeting. As you all know, as some of you know, that's Toby. Toby is Sarah's dog. But As you all know, this year also saw the removal of the scaffolding underneath the Manhattan Bridge section of the park, which also resulted in us piloting a location for the jog run to be relocated on the John Street lawn, which has been, the feedback on it has been largely very positive. There are some residents within the Dumbo community that have certainly complained about the loss of that space of parkland as just sort of parkland. Again, it's a pilot location. And if we were to make that a permanent location, obviously we put capital money in and improve it as dog run and as its direct connection up to it. But another positive thing that we did this year. The marina, as you all know, we have a new operator for the marina that came out this year as a result of the previous operator declaring bankruptcy. The new operator is up and running, making great progress, both with the marina itself, the sail club, the local community groups, including the Kayak Foundation, Brooklyn Bridgewater Boathouse, and Brooklyn Boatworks. In addition, they have, while not a direct park tenant and concession, they have partnered with Sean Feeney, who is restaurateur primarily in Williamsburg. You may know his restaurant Lilia. You may also know Feeney Pizza, and it's opening a restaurant in the old estuary space, and it is opening a Feeney Pizza location, which in addition to their spot on Bedford Avenue in Williamsburg is also the Barclays Center. They're opening a Feeney Pizza in the Ebb and Flow space. Director Merkel, it is my pleasure to tell you that they know you, number one, and they assure me that they will have the almond croissants that you so enjoyed when it was Ebb and Flow.
Just tell me when it's open.
I had a conversation with Feeney himself, and I said, I have a board member, and they said, which board member? And I said, Steve Hartley. They said, oh, we know Steve. All right, but pizza and almond croissants. Maybe an almond croissant pizza.
Okay, please no.
Always with. Feeney is expecting to be open later this summer. And then obviously, sort of the coup de grace of our year was the opening of the new Pier 1 Pavilion. And again, huge hats off to Lindsay and the entire Capital team, and Jeff as well, overseeing this incredible project that not only redefined our entrance of Pier 1, but this brand new building that is already, even before the new concession in the building has opened, is already serving as a focal meeting point for park goers, people that are bringing food from any of the local establishments to have lunch or other meals. And obviously the bathrooms are already allowed. And as a reminder, 100% photovoltaic shingles on the 100% of the roof that will take the building plus off the grid as soon as Con Ed certifies. So that was what we did last year, and here's what we're going to do this year. Obviously, the big thing for us that we've been talking about for many years and takes legal effect July 1 is the integration. That's the word that we're using. The integration with the Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy. In fact, July 1 is we're affectionately referred to as Integration Day. I couldn't remember what we said the logo of the back of the people at the same back of the t-shirts was, but we had one. It's gonna be great. But while this takes legal effect on July 1, we are already acting as if. And in fact, after the meeting's over, I encourage you all, if you haven't, to join us in our office so you could see the quick work that we did to integrate the two organizations into one just on the floor plan by removing a wall that separated the two organizations and moving desks around. And really ensuring that everyone felt like it was one team, and we've been operating that way since the very beginning of April, and are very excited about the future of Whitehall. Sure. So the basic structure is that the park has expanded its mission to now include providing free public programming. So education, arts and culture, movies, fitness, kayaking, all of the program that the Conservancy previously provided is now being provided by the park, and all of the staff that work for the Conservancy that was providing that program had effective July 1 is being hired officially by the park to provide those services. The Conservancy is therefore transitioning its mission from fundraising for those programs to fundraising for the betterment, the improvement, the future of the park itself. And so as we think about large capital projects, as an example, whether it's large projects associated with Pier 7, whether it is whatever the future for underneath the Manhattan Bridge section of the park is, those are large scale capital projects that our capital reserve has some of the money for, but not all of the money for. And so there's a great opportunity for the Conservancy to transition its mission to do that. And this agreement, by the way, was what the board voted to approve back in March. And so the Conservancy staff will now exclusively consist of just the development team. However, the development team internally is being treated like just another department of the larger organization, no different than finance or public affairs or people and culture or operations. Every dollar that they raise, they will transfer to the corporation, and in exchange, we will completely underwrite all of their PS and OTPS expenses, and their staff, while legally on the Conservancy payroll, are being listed as an affiliated organization with our payroll, benefits, or retirement administrators, so that they receive identical pay and benefits as all other park employees. And so while on paper, it looks like they are separate employees, in practice, we're all one organization. As announced this morning by the mayor, the fireworks for the 4th of July will be back in the East River between the Brooklyn Bridge and Pier 6. Happy birthday, Director Bishop.
You're welcome.
Yes, my party's gonna be more expensive than your party though now.
I won't be here.
That makes one of us. So the fireworks will be back. We haven't had them since 2019. With that obviously comes a significant expense that we'll talk about when we get to the budget. The city's doing it a little bit differently than it's done in years past, and there are details forthcoming on this, but it will be a ticketed event. They will be free tickets. This is how they did at Hudson River Park last year when the fireworks were on the west side. There will be a lottery for tickets. We are estimating somewhere order of magnitude 125,000 tickets that will be distributed for the park. The park will be divided into zones. The tickets will be specific to those zones, and that is how NYPD and the city will control access to the viewing areas.
We go to this with the tickets?
No. We will certainly have an allotment of tickets for any staff or board member, or if you need tickets for someone, you just let us know, we'll take them. So that will be happening obviously July 4th. Nope. With every season in the park comes great programming, programming that comes to us and programming that we run ourselves. So that includes the Met Opera is back this month. Wimbledon, the viewing of the semifinals and finals is going to be back in July. Photoville underneath the bridge kicks off this weekend. Yoga's already started in the park. Movies return in July. We just announced the lineup. The theme is Women in Hollywood. Kite Festival was last month, hugely successful. Sailing, kayaking, it's all happening as it does every single summer. Last month was the debut of the latest Public Art Fund installation, which is Torquazy Dyson's Akua. It's at Pier 1 on Bridgeview Lawn. It is a total immersive experience. As you see it, as you get closer, you hear it. As you get even closer, you feel it. And so if you have not yet checked it out, please do. It will be with us at Pier 1 probably for the next 9 to 10 months. All of our concessions are back and operating this summer. All of them are currently open. Oddfellows, Luke's, High Tide, Van Leeuwen, Fornino, they're all open. The only one that is not open currently is pilot at the end of Pier 6. Pilot, that actual boat needs to undergo some repairs to its hull. So you may have noticed that there are 3 boats actually out there at Pier 6. The second of those 3 boats is the Alfred E. Smith, an FDNY fireboat. That was supposed to be part of the high tide concession of Fulton Ferry Landing, but after EDC and the park worked together to change the ferry landing, change the turning radius, so the fireboat actually could not get into dock along Fulton Ferry Landing, so that's why it's been docked for Pier 6. When Pilot, the actual pilot boat, goes for repairs, fireboat's going to move into its spot and become Pilot for the subsequent year or 2. Same exact restaurant, just technically on a different boat. So that is probably going to be happening. They think they'll be up and running. They're hoping in time for July. Squib Park. So we've long talked about Squib Park. The announcement today on Squib Park is that we have just signed a deal that is more than a decade in the making, Director Marr, for Brooklyn Bridge Park to officially take over ownership of Squib Park. I should say management of Squib Park. It's still a Parks Department facility, still under their jurisdiction, but we will officially be managing it. Over the last 15 years, we've done so on a handshake deal. But now we have actual jurisdiction to have all of the authority and responsibility now. And so work closely with the Parks Department. We will be making improvements to Squib Park. We are starting, and this is in our capital budget, we are starting with the bathrooms and going to be completely renovating those bathrooms. And then further restoration, upgrades to be determined to come.
This park's keeping like that for funding.
Yeah.
Got a easy money. Good. Very valuable.
Some additional capital projects, this in this year's capital budget include some maritime stuff, including work to repair the Pier 2 floating dock. We have to remove the transfer bridge at Pier 4. We have to make repairs to Empire Fulton Ferry and Fulton Ferry Landing, the bulkheads. And we also have to redo this boardwalk at Empire Fulton Ferry. All of that is detailed in the capital reserve. As you know, we are renovating the inside of this building, turning the ground floor into the Environmental Education Center, turning the upper 2 floors into park offices, making them habitable as they currently are not. Through an RFP process, we select Gensler as the architect, as you all know, and there's money in this year's capital budget associated with the soft costs, the design costs of that work, and hope to go into construction on that project. It's probably about 9 to 12 months of design and permitting, and then we're going into construction. So lots more to come on that. And then thinking very long-term past the year, just 2 quick slides on this. Obviously the Manhattan Bridge section, you know, there is a small amount of money in this year's capital budget for us to continue to think through this area and what we're doing. Obviously, we've been talking about the potential of a rec center. That requires in order for us to do that, requires a waiver from the federal government. There is a reality that that waiver from the National Park Service is very much in limbo, as I would argue the National Park Service is a little bit in limbo. But we did put a little bit of money in the budget for us to do additional community planning around it, charrettes, etc. Some possible soft cost work. But there's still a lot to be determined with what to do with this space. Obviously, the space is, with the scaffolding gone, is now just a pass-through space. There's also a question about, you know, if we end up not moving forward with the rec center, what we do with the 99 Plymouth buildings. Now, we will be relocating the environmental ed center to this building. And then Director Gutman, for you, obviously the Brooklyn, and Director Kelly and everybody else that's been working on this, the Brooklyn Marine Terminal, we obviously still very much have high hopes about getting Pier 7 and expanding the park, and look forward to where that process goes from. So then that brings us to the actual numbers themselves, which are detailed in your board book. But big picture. This year's operating budget is proposed at $21,293,912. That is a $6 million increase over last year's operating budget, which was about $15.3 million. That increase is largely due, obviously, to the integration with the Conservancy, as we are taking on all of the PS and OTPS expenses for their entire organization, as well as increased expenses that are associated with the ice skating rink utilities that were not in the previous year's budget, that are obviously that we were able to pay for, but were not part of the original budget proposal of 25, as well as expenses related to the 4th of July. So while having the fireworks here ended up costing us a couple $100,000 for security and fencing in for certain areas. So the increase is largely due to those items. Our revenue this year is projected at $36,543,852. The revenue is expected to increase over last year's budget by about $6 million. Last year's revenue was about 30.6. The increase in revenue is largely due to pilot and rent escalation on all of our development properties, revenue raised from the ice skating rink itself, and of course, the contributions raised by the Conservancy that get transferred to the park. This leaves us with a surplus at the end of the year of $15,249,939, similar to last year's surplus, which will be allocated primarily to the capital and the maritime reserve. A little bit's going to go into the operating reserve, and the operating reserve, which again, we have never touched, is simply there should something unforeseen awful happen that dramatically impacts the revenue coming from the development. That operating reserve sits at what will now be with the new budget about 60% of 1 year's budget, which is over $12 million. But the bulk of the surplus goes into the capital and maritime reserve, which is obviously where we spend, where the bulk of these capital projects, where those get funded out of, and so that includes some highlights. We talked about some of this: Pier 2 dock, marine work at Fulton Ferry Landing and Empire Fulton Ferry, the soft costs for 334 Permit, the Empire Fulton Ferry Boardwalk, the build out of the seasonal ice skating rink is also in there. All of that again detailed in your board. At the end of the year, after we pay for everything, we receive all the revenue, we pay for everything, we pay for all of our capital, we will end the year with about $60 million in our capital maritime reserve and $12.8 million in our operating. Also detailed in the board book is the PAAA form that's required. Happy to take any questions that anyone has on obviously the budget or anything else. Thank you. Sure. So the Capital Maritime Reserve was set up originally as, which is what it remains today, which is the fund that we put the bulk of our surplus in, which is how we typically fund all of the capital projects and maritime projects that we know about. For example, in 2019, I believe, we kicked off our largest maritime project, which was the $115 million preventive maintenance, fully funded out of the Capital and Maritime Reserve. The new Pier 1 Pavilion project, which was about $15 million, fully funded out of the Capital and Maritime Reserve. When the park's financial model was created, it was created with an understanding that the revenue would outpace the operations, but that the purpose of that surplus was to fund needed restoration. Everything that you build in a park has a lifespan, as Marty well knows, and to have the ability to go fix things when they need it has given us great flexibility and great user experience. One of the examples I often give is the Pier 5 synthetic turf, which we completed in 2020. The spring of 2020, we announced that the Pier 5 turf fields, which were, the average lifespan of a synthetic turf field is 8 to 10 years, depending on use and wear and tear, and how you want it to be maintained. But then in 2020, it needed to be redone. We issued an RFP, selected a contractor in the spring, late spring, early summer of 2020. It was about a $3 million project, all in, including the turf, the lights, upgrades, some drainage improvements. we actioned the project right after Labor Day. And by February of 21, so after just the fall and the winter, we cut the ribbon on the brand new turf fields.
So the revenue increased because of additional pilot picking, right?
Yes.
How many more escalation are there? Per se?
Annual.
Oh,
Well, so the rent, there's pilot and there's rent. So the rent has built-in escalation where annually it's gonna increase. And then the pilot is the property taxes. So as New York City goes, so to do the property taxes and our pilot is doing. We get pilot numbers directly from DOF. Whatever DOF tells us what the property tax bill would be on each one of those buildings, that's what the bill is. So it's solely based on DOF's assessment. As a homeowner in Brooklyn, I wish they didn't increase, but they do.
Formula is no different.
No, exactly, it's exactly the same thing.
So I think that's often a question, it's exactly.
The only question.
Different collection,
That's right. Basically what pilot is it's the property tax by DOF. The only difference is it comes directly to us.
and then it's.
Payments in lieu of taxes.
Other,
First of all, amazing year that just passed, amazing year to come, congratulations. You, team. One question for old time's sake, the Manhattan Bridge,
yes,
we've taken down the scaffold. Craig's laughing, this is, should we do this in harmony? I mean, we normally do a duet on this, I mean,
I'm just amazed that we've reached for old time's sake on Manhattan Bridge already.
well, I'm hoping it's for old time's sake, although it's unclear that any change that we make it such, so. So the scaffolding's down, the reason the scaffolding is there, and the reason we've had all these issues over all these years, because dangerous stuff fell off that bridge,
Yes.
and the DOT and TA pointing fingers at each other, and neither did anything meaningful to address that, and both expressed an inability to do anything meaningful to address that. So since the scaffolding's down, my question is, what's our state of comfort with that? As I mean, one of the arguments with the rec center was that it would be a building with a roof. So if stuff fell off a train, a subway train or some other way, nobody walking below would get killed. So I was wondering, and I know that historically you had quite an impressive collection of memorabilia that had fallen off the bridge, including railroad ties. So my question is, since we've taken the scaffold, well, when we took down the scaffold, what did we find on top? Since we've taken down the scaffolding, and then
Yeah, so the
we're
air,
concerned about public safety.
I appreciate it. The bulk of the area that is underneath the bridge is what made up the climbing wall and the former dog run.
Right.
Both of those areas are completely closed to the public and have been. The climbing wall since before the scaffolding came down, and the dog run since the scaffolding came down as the relocation, pilot location. The remainder of the area is simply paths. Making the entire area quote unquote pass through, no different than adjacent city street, but also around the bridge, but it has no overhead protection. City's perspective on this to date has been that passing through poses a significantly lower risk than congregating under. So by relocating the dog run and closing it to the public and maintaining the former climbing wall space as inaccessible. We also removed all park benches from those pathways, making there nothing to do other than pass through to be compliant with the city's broader policy. In addition to that, we have not been made aware of any instance of anything falling, nor have we discovered any great significance to date. Though we have not been spending any significant time in the former climbing wall or the dog run. When we did remove the scaffolding, yes, there were still certain there, but nothing of the, it's hard to have this conversation, nothing of the size and scale of the track tie, which is true story. Cause a nut or a bolt that fell 100 feet, it could also, I suspect, do significant damage. So yes, there was some of that type of stuff still on the scaffolding.
Yeah, you know, I'm familiar with the DOT's all too precious way of defining how they deal with, you know, pass through congregating place. Policy climate system. City. But I was wondering about whether we found debris. I guess the answer is yes, but we're not really monitoring for that at the moment. And
We aren't, I wouldn't say that we are monitoring for it at the moment, I'd say we are not monitoring for it in the same level that we were pre the scaffolding going up in the first place, because the bulk of the area is not publicly
It's not
accessible, it's not
yeah.
usable. And you know, as a reminder, the way that this whole thing originated going on, Sarah, 8 years ago, was a reporter for the now defunct Patch. Remember the Patch.com, a reporter for Patch was climbing at the climbing wall when an item fell and he hit what I commonly refer to as the back of house of the climbing wall structure. And prior to this job, I think you all know I was in public affairs and press and communications. I thought I was pretty good at that type of stuff. Not even I could kill that story. So, you know, a reporter climbing and something felt like that's a story, which then kicked off other stories and other questions. And then we obviously jumped in and put up the scaffolding within a matter of weeks. And that scaffolding was up for a better part of 7 years.
thanks. Sorry, I'll pay the trip down there.
Yeah, look,
Us treating it different doesn't mean that the.
No, there are-
Which it has.
I think as you know, as we talked about, you know, there are some threshold questions as it relates to handling this space. There is we could lean into the city's policy and say that what we build there permanently, because it doesn't benefit anyone to have the climbing wall, the former climbing wall, the dog run officially closed forever, right? So we could lean in and build something out there that is strictly viewable for passerbys. Or we could build something that is fully protected from above. And the two options on that are a massive ground up pavilion cover or a building. The cost implications of both building and ground up solutions, while a building is more expensive, it is not more expensive. Its increase in expense, I would argue, matches its increase in useful utility. And the construction duration of a massive structure like a pavilion cover and a building are not all. And so that's how we got to the idea of a building. Was sure it will cost us $15 to $20 million more of a $50 or $70 million budget, right? Those are the types of numbers we're talking about. The extra 15 to 20 million is worth utility. It's kind of how we got to the rec center. The rec center poses lots of challenges in the community. And there is the reality, because of the area being protected under the Landwater Conservation Fund Act, which states that it should be outdoor recreation. The only way to be able to build an indoor facility like a public rec center is to get a waiver from the federal government, the National Park Service. Kind of how we got to where we are now.
Thanks.
Any more questions on that? Do I have a
Yeah.
Greg, you are up. Tag you.
All right, this is my first, I'm stepping in, the Audit and Finance Committee. So the committee met, Thursday, May 22nd, items. Do we need a motion to approve?
Yes.
So, motion to approve,
Much
FY
better,
20
Right.
the FY 26 budget and the EAA.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor? Being none, we can move on. The third agenda item is the authorization to enter into agreement with Deborah Bradley Construction Management Services relating to a capital restoration project. Marked as item 3, I asked Ron Mendocino, Brooklyn Bridge Park Senior Company Manager, capital projects and restoration, that this item. I don't read a long title, right?
I was earlier the funding for bridges for regrading, repaving, as well as marine rail restoration and replacement at select locations throughout the Dumbo section of the park. In April, the park published an RFP for the scope of work and received 3 competitive proposals. After reviewing the proposals and interviewing all firms, Brookbridge Park selected Deborah Bradley Construction and Management Services Inc. based on their demonstrated depth in New York City, their competitive price, and their status as a WPE certified contractor. PQB is requesting authorization into a new contract with Deborah Bradley Construction Management for a total of $443,452, which includes 10%. Park staff have reviewed all proposed pricing for each scope of work, the Gardner and Diebold, the Owens representative, and concluded that each sum is a fair and reasonable price for the services to be performed and recommend approval of this agreement.
The audit and finance, they did review this, right? Report on.
So we reviewed it, there were questions that were answered.
Any other questions from the directors?
And I just went to the governance committee also.
Is there a motion? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion approved. Fourth agenda item is the authorization to enter into amendment of an existing agreement with the KRF relating to environmental consulting services, which is bookmarked as item 4. Lindsay Ross, Brooklyn Bridge Park Vice President for Capital Projects and Restoration. Right. We're still in the morning. I love it.
Morning, Director. Today we have a few items on the board review. The first was American map, the marketing and environmental consultant. The amendment expands a craft public services for upcoming projects to the end of fiscal year 2026. This includes marketing services for maritime projects at Bulk Ferry, the Bulk Ferry Landing, and its 2, 3, 4, 5. It also includes septic abatement for the upper core here. The amendment requests an increase of $208,058, bringing the total acre rent contract value to $4,547,257. The directors are hereby requested to authorize CPC to amend.
Let's jump in real quick before turn over questions or both the finance and the governance committee perspective that both had robust conversations on this and the next agenda item. So AKRF, the next agenda item makeups are long-term contracts that we've had. We have a few long-term contracts that were set up many years ago that were not specific to a duration of time, but specific to a dollar amount. And over the years, the staff has come to the board and has authorized the increase of those contracts, and those contracts to increase the dollar amount for the continued services that these really consultants are providing to us. One, we had a robust conversation at the Audit Finance and Governance Committee about the accuracy of that and the procurement of that, and in response to those, and this is also mentioned in the report, obviously in the memo, but in response to that conversation, we at staff level are going through all, there are 4 of them, we are going through these 4 sort of long-term contracts that have been amended by the board a number of times, and seeing what the best course of action is with them, and we'll be having that follow-up discussion with both Audit Finance and Governance. So I did want to acknowledge that conversation happened and that work is ongoing.
Hey,
this got needed to be audited by, so what is the clarity, so.
And we did it again, government, so,
Okay. Good a lot.
but I think, yeah, I think everybody thought it was appropriate staff to take a look at that, figure out what guidelines we should use.
Sure.
So I didn't want to present the, I didn't want the items to present and say without acknowledging that, A, that conversation happened. We are still asking for approval of these two amendments. There is value in that. And we've done a significant deep dive on what like entities have done with these types of currents. And what the sort of the history of these types of contracts are, and we have stuff that we'll be sharing very soon, and we'll be asking for, finance and governance staff to meet. Our actual hope is that we connect to a person meeting, the substantive topic, something that's not close.
Thank you. Given that comment, the Greg, you.
With that, I think, we did, meet and had, really robust conversation about this, but we reviewed the item to come.
Sorry.
Yeah, Jocelyn, do you wanna governance that also?
Oh, no, I just, yeah.
Yeah.
We were also.
Yeah.
Just wanna confirm from the committee and members of.
And the website, I just there was something conversation about.
Yeah, again, I think, the big distinction, I think, that one of the big distinctions that we found as we've done that you've got with other entities is these contracts are not time duration and dollar amounts. That is a massive difference in my mind with, as we've spoken to Hudson River and Governors and Navy Yard, that there's a time contracts, ours are dollar contracts. And so it doesn't change where we could go with this, but it is a significant difference. And probably is part of the rationale as to why we've done it the way we've done it, going back in some cases, as really not these two, but the other two that are in the mix, which are MBDA and Garden Fuel. Let's go back to where the Park Corporation was formed, where the Development Corporation comes back.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it was a long and devoted committee. Yeah, it's a long and robust conversation. Between a new contract and just increasing the authorization of this current contract. It was something that we'll discuss.
Given the commentary on this, is there a motion to approve the AKRF extension and pending further discussion on the current contract? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Fifth agenda item, Lindsay, I'd ask you to present, with respect to Jacobs Engineering Group related resident.
The second contract amendment, Jacob, the Department of Marine Engineers, this proposed amendment also centers. The scope of work is design and construction, systems for repairs and landing at Empire Bulk Ferry at its year 3.5. The amendment also covers the sections along the Dumble Water. The proposed amendment totals $602,578, bringing the overall contract value to $8,212,270. The directors are hereby requested to authorize DEP staff and
Acknowledging that audits of finance and governance did also discuss this contract extension. Do I have a motion to approve this? All in favor? Motion carried. We're now at the point where are there additional matters? And I have one question. Is there a understanding of what, if any, damage was done based on the crash of the unfortunate Baden crash?
Yeah, so the only knowledge that we have right now about the tall ship that crashed into the bridge and a small section of the Plaza is related to the marine rail itself, which is Deborah Bradley contract crew. Thank you to DEC will be making those repairs in months, I would say. The bulkhead itself, we don't yet know if there's been any significant damage. It is actually not the park's bulkhead. So we have been in touch,
Everybody,
have been in touch with DOT, spoke with their Commissioner Bridges. Who acknowledged that it is their bulkhead. We offered any assistance, we even said, we'll happily send our guys to the water if you so want. They've acknowledged that it's their bulkhead and that their first priority is the bridge.
And there's no structural.
There is no structural instability on the parkland itself, so, you know, I think
Just on the plane. Parking spot that are, but
that I'm feeling supremely confident currently about that.
Have we had any members of the public? Okay. So at this point, we are, at the point of adjournment, is there anyone who wants to accept? No, seeing none, I have a motion.
so.
Second. Meeting.
Thank you guys.